I had a bed in my garden that I had basically given up on. 3 years of trying, 3 years of compost, fertilizer, watering, nothing worked. The soil looked dead because it essentially was. Then a neighbor, an old farmer, been working the land for 60 years, watched me dig at it one afternoon and said something that changed everything. He said, "You keep feeding the plants, you're not feeding the soil." He told me what to do. I did it. 2 weeks later, I had earthworms in that bed for the first time in 3 years. In one season, it became one of my most productive beds. The ingredient he told me about costs almost nothing. In many cases, you can get it entirely for free. It's been used by farmers for literally thousands of years. Ancient civilizations in the Amazon built some of the most fertile soil in the world using it, and then modern agriculture forgot about it for about a century. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is, why it works at a level that goes far beyond any fertilizer, how to make it or get it, and how to apply it. And I'm going to show you why this single change might be the most important thing you do in your garden this year. The ingredient is biochar. And I know what some of you are thinking. I've heard about biochar. It's complicated, it's expensive. I don't know how to make it. None of that is true. Or at least, it doesn't have to be. Biochar is simply charcoal, made from wood or plant material that has been prepared in a specific way that makes it extraordinarily beneficial to soil. It's not a fertilizer. It doesn't feed plants directly. What it does is create a structure in the soil that completely transforms how nutrients, water, and microorganisms behave. Think of it as building a city for your soil biology versus throwing food at it from outside. Today I'll cover what biochar actually is, why the Amazon civilizations used it, how to get it or make it cheaply, how to charge it before applying, and exactly how and where to apply it for the fastest results. And I'll address the one mistake that causes most people to say biochar didn't work for them, because that mistake is very common and very avoidable. Biochar is charcoal, but not just any charcoal. And this distinction matters. Regular charcoal, the kind you use for grilling, is made quickly at high temperatures and burns almost completely when used as fuel. It's not useful for soil because it has very little internal structure left after processing. Biochar is made at lower temperatures in a low-oxygen environment through a process called pyrolysis. The organic material, wood, crop residue, manure, coconut shells, doesn't burn completely. Instead, it transforms into a stable carbon structure with an extraordinary internal surface area. Here's what I mean by that. A single gram of high-quality biochar, about the weight of a paperclip, has an internal surface area of up to 300 square meters. All of that surface area is porous, honeycomb-like, and covered in microscopic cavities that hold water, nutrients, and most importantly, microorganisms. When you add biochar to depleted soil, you're not just adding a material, you're adding infrastructure. You're building the physical framework that allows a healthy soil biology to establish and persist. Bacteria and fungi colonize the pores. They process nutrients and make them available to plants. Water is retained instead of draining away. The soil becomes essentially alive again. And here's the part that makes biochar unlike almost anything else. It's permanent. Properly made biochar doesn't decompose for hundreds, in some cases thousands of years. You apply it once, it works indefinitely. This is the part of the biochar story that I find most remarkable, because it proves that this isn't a new idea someone invented in a lab. It's an ancient practice that was lost and rediscovered. The Amazon basin is not naturally fertile land. The native soil is typically poor and acidic. The heavy tropical rains leach nutrients out rapidly. You'd expect it to be a difficult place to grow food. And yet, scattered throughout the Amazon, archaeologists have found patches of soil that are extraordinarily dark, rich, and fertile, soil that has remained productive for hundreds of years with almost no management. This soil is called terra preta, Portuguese for dark earth. It was deliberately created by pre-Columbian civilizations over a period of centuries. The main ingredient, charcoal, mixed with bone, manure, and compost, incorporated into the soil in massive quantities. The civilizations that created it are gone. The soil they made is still there, still producing. After 1,000 years, modern soil scientists spent years trying to understand why terra preta is so much more productive than the surrounding soil. The answer led directly to the revival of biochar as a serious agricultural tool. What those ancient farmers knew intuitively, we can now explain in detail, and more importantly, we can replicate it on any scale, in any garden, using materials that are available to almost everyone. Option 1. Buy it. Biochar is now sold at many garden centers and online. Look for horticultural biochar or soil biochar, not barbecue charcoal. Prices vary, but a bag sufficient for a small garden bed costs around $15 to $25. This is the simplest option. No work, no tools, just apply. Option 2. Make it from a wood fire. This is easier than it sounds. The next time you have a bonfire or burn brush, let it burn down to coals, not ash. Before those coals fully turn to ash, smother the fire with soil or sand to stop the combustion. What you're left with after it cools is crude biochar. It won't have the same surface area as purpose-made biochar, but it works. Generations of farmers use this method without knowing the name for it. Option 3. The cone method. This is how I make mine, and it's the best quality DIY biochar. Dig a cone-shaped pit in the ground, about 2 feet deep and 2 feet wide at the top. Light a small fire at the bottom with dry wood. As it burns down to coals, keep adding more dry wood on top in layers. The trick is to keep a layer of actively burning material on top of the coals at all times. This creates the low oxygen environment beneath that produces good biochar rather than ash. After a few hours, when your pit is full of coals, quench it completely with water. Let it cool, break it up, and you have a bucket of high-quality homemade biochar. For most home gardeners, option 2, using the coals from wood you're already burning, is the most practical. You produce biochar as a byproduct of something you're already doing. Zero extra cost, zero extra time. This is the mistake I mentioned at the beginning, the one that causes most people to say biochar didn't work for them. Fresh, uncharged biochar can actually harm your garden initially. Here's why. All those empty pores in fresh biochar, they're hungry. They will absorb nutrients from the surrounding soil to fill themselves. For the first weeks after application, fresh biochar can actually draw nitrogen and other nutrients away from your plants rather than making nutrients available. The solution is to charge the biochar before applying it. Charging simply means filling those pores with beneficial material before it goes in the ground, so it arrives in the soil already loaded with what it needs to immediately support plant growth. The easiest charging method: mix your biochar with finished compost, roughly 1 part biochar to 3 parts compost, and let it sit for 2 to 4 weeks. The compost fills the biochar's pores with microbial life and nutrients. You can also soak biochar in diluted compost tea, in the fermented kitchen waste liquid we talked about in our first video, or in diluted liquid fertilizer for 48 hours. Charged biochar doesn't just avoid the initial nutrient lockup, it delivers a concentrated dose of beneficial biology directly to the application zone. You're not just adding structure to the soil, you're seeding it with life. This one step is the difference between biochar that works dramatically and biochar that seems to do nothing. Don't skip it. Application is straightforward. The key is getting the biochar into the root zone, not just on the surface. For a new bed or a bed you're turning over, mix charged biochar into the top 12 to 15 inches of soil at a rate of about 10% by volume. So for every 10 buckets of soil, add 1 bucket of charged biochar. This sounds like a lot. It is for the first application. After that, you don't need to add more for years. The biochar stays. For an established bed where you can't dig, top dress with charged biochar and let rainfall and earthworms work it down over time. This is slower but still effective. Apply it around the drip line of your plants, the edge of the canopy, where feeder roots are most active. For containers and raised beds, biochar is particularly powerful in these situations because nutrients tend to flush out with irrigation. Biochar holds them in. Mix at 10 to 15% by volume when filling or refreshing your container mix. The results you see in 2 weeks will be in the soil, not in the plants. Look for darker color, improved texture, more earthworm activity. The plants will follow, usually within 4 to 6 weeks. You'll see measurably stronger growth in beds that received biochar versus those that didn't. The bed I told you about at the beginning of this video, the one I'd given up on, is now in its 5th year since biochar treatment. It has never needed another significant amendment. Every season it outperforms beds that get regular fertilizer applications. That's what building real soil looks like. One more application that most people don't think about: biochar in your compost pile. Adding biochar to an active compost pile does 2 things. It speeds up the composting process by creating habitat for the microorganisms doing the work, and it captures and holds nutrients that would otherwise volatilize, escape as gases during the hot phase of decomposition. Nitrogen loss during hot composting can be significant. Biochar prevents that. The result is finished compost that is noticeably richer and more microbially active than compost without biochar. And because the biochar has been sitting in your hot compost pile for weeks or months, it arrives pre-charged and ready to use. No separate charging step needed. Add about 5% by volume, roughly 1 bucket per 20 buckets of compost material when you build or turn a pile. Small addition, large difference in the end product. If this kind of soil-first thinking resonates, building a garden from the ground up rather than fighting it every season, there's a resource I've been using for years that covers the complete picture. It goes into water systems, food preservation, off-grid energy, the full garden layout, everything that makes a homestead work as one integrated system rather than a collection of separate problems to solve. The link is in the description. I don't recommend things I don't use myself, and this one has been on my shelf for years. It's worth a look if you're serious about building real self-sufficiency. Tell me in the comments, have you used biochar before? And if you have, what did you notice? I learn as much from your results as you do from mine. We've covered a lot of ground over these first few videos. Fermented fertilizer, underground cold storage, soil revival. Next week, we're going to bring it all together and look at something that connects all 3, building a garden system that actually feeds itself with minimal outside input. You won't want to miss it. Until then, dig deep, plant well,